So this happened to my mom maybe 3 years ago. My mom has now passed away, but she was maybe 40 at the time. She was a very pretty woman, looking young for her age. She often had total strangers propose to her. Everyone was pretty much obsessed with her. That being said, she was no stranger to dealing with creeps. So one day she was at Woodman's, a grocery store for those who don't know. It wasn't really a bad area, but it was close to a bad area and was right off the freeway, so it could be a little sketchy. She always told me that she didn't want me going there alone, especially at night. When I would go with her at night, I would not leave her side, even though I was 18 to 20 at the time. So anyways, she was there during the day, doing her grocery shopping alone. She noticed a man in the same aisle as her. He was looking at her, and when she turned to look at him, he would look away and act like he was looking at something else on the shelves. Honestly, she didn't think much of it. As I mentioned, she dealt with her fair share of creeps. So she grabbed what she needed and moved to another aisle. That is when she noticed him again, in the same aisle as her, doing the same thing. This time it kind of rubbed her the wrong way, but she went on with her business and again moved on. The man kept following her throughout the store. Now it's worth mentioning that my mom was not one to be messed with. She was very confrontational, never backing away from a fight, has beaten the shit out of men, taking beatings from men, usually carried a weapon. So as she was getting ready to check out, he was still following her. Now she's pretty pissed off and didn't feel safe leaving. She alerted an employee who went to go get a manager. My mom took this opportunity to tell him off, saying something like, "Can I help you? What the fuck do you want?" He replied to her saying, "You look like the kind of girl who would look really good in someone's basement." At this point, she was not only mad, but absolutely terrified. The manager came, and while my mom was telling them about the guy and what he had said, he ran off. The police were called, and they were able to locate him in or around the building. They escorted him off the property, but that was all. My mom was so afraid that the guy was lurking somewhere, waiting to see what car she got in, and then proceeded to follow her. She ended up calling me in tears, saying that she was afraid that she was going to be followed or abducted, and that she wanted someone to know, so she and I stayed on the phone till she was home. It took a lot to shake or scare my mom, but she really had a good intuition, so for her to be as shaken as she was, he had to be as creepy as they come. His comment to her only proved that further. In the end, she was okay, but I can't imagine what would have happened if she didn't tell someone, or if he did wait for her and followed her. Two years ago, I met this guy on Tinder. Good feeling from the start, and we quickly decided to see each other. He asked me to come sleep at his place, which I accepted because we had mutual friends. I told myself he was definitely someone I can trust. I arrived at his house at 9 p.m., and I immediately see that it's not what I imagined. He looked dirty. His apartment looked like he was a squatter, and there was a smell of stale tobacco in every room. I see a stack of books on autism, and I ask him about it. I learned at this moment that he was autistic with Asperger's, and that he has difficulty differentiating from right and wrong. He also tells me that he knows how to analyze nonverbal language very well, and that he knows what a person's thinking just by their attitude. I didn't know anything about that, but I directly wondered what his inability to recognize right from wrong meant. He offers me a glass of alcohol, which I accept, and as I follow him into the kitchen, I see a weapon placed on the counter. I'm a little panicked when I see this, and seeing my look, he explains to me that it's not charged and that it belongs to his father. I never saw if it was a real weapon, but I'm starting to get a little uneasy. On Tinder, he told me he wrote quite a bit, like me, so he shows me a poem he wrote on his computer. It recounted the rape of a child in quite precise detail. I freaked out. I pretended to appreciate his talent because he was really starting to scare me. We then talk about his ex, and he tells me that they had fun choking and drowning each other in the shower. because they wanted to know what it felt like to have control over the other's life. It was too much. I had swept away a lot of red flags in just a few hours, but I wanted to leave. Problem, I had to sleep at his house, so I had to find a plausible excuse to leave without him understanding that I was fleeing the situation. I was afraid that he had bad intentions and would come after me if he understood that I was afraid and that I understood his little game. I discreetly sent a message to my father with the address so that he can come pick me up immediately. I explained to the boy that unfortunately I couldn't stay, but I was really disappointed on not being able to stay longer. I played it to perfection. At that moment, we were both in bed, and I was looking at my phone, waiting for only one thing, to find out that my father is going to be here. At this point, he asked me if I'm in a hurry to leave because he notices that I'm looking at my phone regularly. I'm scared because I remember him saying that he knew what a person was thinking just by their attitude. I told myself that he was going to take action if I didn't hide my fear. I managed to make him believe, at least I had the impression, that everything was okay and that I was in absolutely no hurry to leave. He offers me a massage, to which I try to refuse, but not wanting him to understand my discomfort, especially since I would soon be out of this trouble, I accept. I find myself in my underwear, him on top. It was horrible. Just as he was about to touch my chest, my phone rang. My father was in front of the house. I get dressed quickly and barely say goodbye to him as I leave his apartment. I sent him one last message explaining that I didn't want to follow up because his behavior really freaked me out. Then I blocked him. One of my friends matched with him on Tinder a few days later. He had offered them to come and sleep at his place. I warned my friend, who didn't follow up with this guy. I don't know if it was just weird or if something could have happened to me, but be careful on Tinder. You never really know the person. This happened a long time ago. I was a petite, small girl, and I was only 18 or 19 years old. I worked at a junior food store in Kentucky. There were a couple of incidents that happened to me in the short time I worked there. I have several other stories, but those are for another time. The store was somewhat isolated, and I was left alone most of my shifts. My manager, who happened to be married, and another employee that happened to be my manager's best friend, would leave me to meet their boyfriends. Some of my duties consisted of sweeping the parking lot and measuring the gas after closing at midnight. I hated doing this by myself. There weren't any other businesses open anywhere close to me. This was back around 1984, so of course there were no cell phones. I was very naive at the time. One night I received this call from this man asking if we had any Playboy magazines. I informed him that yes we do, and a few other magazines. He asked who was the centerfold in the Playboy. The phone I was using was a cordless phone at the time. I politely told him to just wait a minute. I looked at the magazines and told him the name of the model. He then asked me if her pussy looked juicy. I froze and hung up on him. Thank God he didn't call back. It scared me so bad, and I really felt like an idiot for even looking at the centerfold for him. The second incident was a lot scarier than the previous one. When I was hired, I was instructed to call the police if anyone stayed out in the parking lot for more than 15 minutes. There weren't many people that came to the store after dark, and the night that I was scared for my life, it was no different. I had completed all my duties at the time, and I was just waiting until I could close the doors and go home. A man pulled up right in front of the door, in a light-colored car. I've never been able to distinguish the make or model of any car. I waited for him to come in, happy that someone would break up the silence of my shift. I could see him as I stood at the cash register. He was leaning over, looking at himself in the rearview mirror. He continually wiped his face and hands. I couldn't see anything on him from where I was standing. I immediately got a really bad feeling about what he was doing. When he had pulled up, I glanced at the clock and time crept by as I was watching him wipe his face over and over again. I waited 15 minutes and then I called 911 and told the dispatcher about the situation. In no time, 2 police cars pulled up and confronted the man. I watched them handcuff him, but didn't see anything else due to the fact that another customer came in to buy some gas. It seemed like forever before the officers came in and thanked me for calling them, and asked if I was okay. What he told me next made a shiver run through me, and my blood run cold. He informed me that the man had been wiping blood from his face, and there's a huge butcher knife type with the handle broken off, and it was covered in blood as well. He said the man appeared intoxicated, and since the car was running, they arrested him for DUI. The officer added that they had contacted his family, and everyone appeared okay. He added that they didn't know whose blood it was, but would continue to investigate to see if they could find someone that he apparently hurt or killed. I never heard anything else regarding this case. I realized that anything could have happened to me that night, and I quit shortly afterwards. So phone guy and bloody guy with a blood-covered knife, let's not meet again. My aunt owns a local diner in the middle of a small town where everyone knows everyone. Recently, she had almost half of her waiters quit within a month, which she knew about but didn't tell me why when she was telling my mom this, and I overheard it while doing homework at the dining table. She then asked my mom if my 2 older sisters could help out. My mom said that the oldest is moving out of town to live with her fiancé, but agreed to let my older sister work. Then my aunt asked about me. Mind you, I'm a 15-year-old girl, and the last thing on my mind to do after school is going to work, even for a few hours. Even if I had time to get home in the evening and finish my homework, I still wouldn't like the idea at all. My mom was quiet for a little bit before agreeing, since even I know money is a touchy subject. Ever since my dad divorced my mom, I had chosen to stay with my mom 100% of the time, because my dad is an alcoholic and often liked to hurt my mom's feelings, and has done some nasty things to my sister and I. I don't even know where he is now, probably in jail, or married to another poor woman who will be his next victim, but that's partially the reason why we were struggling when it comes to money. Fast forward a week. I went to school on a Wednesday morning like normal, except I had to pack an extra set of clothes in my already stuffed backpack. My aunt talked to me and told me that I would have to wear a uniform, and that she doesn't want my mom to know what I wear, so she wants me to put it in my backpack instead of going to school in it. She even said that she can wash it every week since it will probably smell like eggs and other dining foods. I usually take the bus to school, so days that I work, I'd have to take another bus that dropped me off about 2 minutes away from the diner. The bus driver really doesn't care if we get off at unusual stops, or maybe they had no idea and we're just working for a paycheck, much like I'm about to do. And at each end of my shift, my auntie would drop me off back at home, after I changed my clothes back, of course. Once at the diner, I would go to the back through the kitchen, which had 2 chefs who worked harder than any cooks I've ever seen, and then I would walk right to my auntie's office. There, I could see her computer on a desk, a whole lot of paperwork, clothes around, and just a total mess. So my outfit is basically a buttoned-down white t-shirt, a white mini skirt, and one of those teeny aprons that only covers you from the waist to the crotch. I kind of like the way this fits on me, but the fact that I'm wearing all white means I'm gonna get dirty, maybe every night. My sister has a similar outfit, but her skirt is longer since sometimes she doesn't shave her legs. I just know I don't want to have the same issues she has. The first night went well. I got a lot of people looking at me funny and asked if I'm a kid, to which I told them my age, and some of them were upset that a kid was working. Some were happy thinking I was trying to help out a family business, and some were just weird and happy to see me. Whatever the reason it was, I just like talking to people, so this was super easy. Plus, most of them didn't mind that I would bring out 1 plate at a time, instead of 5 or 6 like a pro waitress. Friday night comes around, and this is the night I finally meet the guy who's one of the main reasons why the other waitresses quit. My auntie really wanted me to meet him since he's in about 3 or 4 times a week and orders a good portion. His name was Larry, and he seems really nice and friendly. He even treated me more like a friend than a waitress. and would have me sit down with him and told me stories about how he fixed cars, travels for work, eats at every restaurant ever, and stayed at every hotel in the world. I never told him my age, but I'm pretty sure he could tell I'm a minor. Often enough, he sits at a booth in the corner of the restaurant and would ask me to sit beside him so he can kick his feet up on the other bench, which I didn't mind. But it only started to get weird when he would poke one of the buttons on my hidden apron and thinks it's my belly button and asks me if I had an outie belly button and if I'm ticklish. I do in fact have an outie belly button, but I didn't want to tell him that. I would just fake a giggle. Sometimes I would feel his hand brush up on my chest, which I didn't care much of either. But there was a few times where I felt like he was feeling my chest from my nipples, which I still don't know why he would want to see them, since my chest is pretty flat. Again, I'm 15, I'll know they'll grow. Sometimes he would grab my arm or thigh and give me massages, which didn't really feel good, and I tell him that I didn't like it. He just tells me that I'll start to like it. Usually for every visit from Larry, I'd make up a dozen excuses that I needed to go before he would accept and let me go. I didn't mind anything weird from Larry. He seemed innocent enough, like a grandpa who just wanted to spend some time with his grandkids. But I really wish I wasn't chosen to babysit him every time he comes in here. Since he spends about $100 a week here, my auntie just tells me to ignore him and let him ramble on since he's one of the reasons why the business is still afloat, which are my auntie's words. But I'm pretty sure $100 a week can't cover the rent alone. After about a week of seeing Larry most of my shifts, he comes in with his laptop and shows me his Facebook and told me to look myself up so we could be friends. I seriously don't want to see Larry in my life 24/7, so I lied and told him that I never made a Facebook. He simply laughed, thought for a second, and wrote my whole name out on the search bar. For a second, I was so shocked that I turned pale, even from my light skin. I had a name tag, but only my first name. But my stupid sister probably told him our last name when he asked. She may be older, but she doesn't act like it. He found a picture of me and sent me a friend request, to which my phone goes off, making Larry laugh, and my heart dropped to my stomach. He sent me a few messages just to hear my phone go off every few times. As I pull it out and fake a laugh before swallowing the throw up in my mouth, he then proceeds to go to my gallery, which my Facebook is public since I'm stupid enough to make as many friends as possible, much like Instagram, and try to gain as many followers. He found pics on there which I wish he wouldn't have found, and would comment on how my clothes were too revealing and I should take these pics down. He commented on my friends and how he could find me a good set of friends to be with, to which I had no idea what he was referring to since he told me before that he has no kids and lives alone. Then he sees my picture with my belly button revealed and comments on my outie belly button and pokes my belly button again. I could really feel his finger try to find my belly button, which felt so disgusting that I just got up without a reason and stormed into my auntie's office. I confess everything to her and tell her how disgusted I am. And at first she seemed to be on my side, but when I explained the things he did to me, she quickly changed sides and told me that I'm just over-exaggerating and he's just treating me like a kid in a friendly way. I wanted to burst out crying and asked my sister for help, even wanting to talk to my mom about to confess at all. But my sister calmed me down and told me how my auntie would have to let us go. Then we wouldn't have enough money to keep our apartment and that we would have to live with our dad. I had no idea if this was true, but the things that my dad did to me are in fact way worse than what Larry had done so far. Fast forward a few months to present day. I still work at the diner and see Larry almost on a daily basis. He still acts the same and once in a while touches me, but it's gotten to the point where it's nothing too concerning, like my chest or thigh, which I still don't care too much about. I only care when he touches my belly button or nipple. I know that for summer, my mom will make me work, and because of my age, I legally can't find a job anywhere else. I'm pretty much okay if I have to keep working for summer. The only good thing about Larry is he would often order twice in one sitting, which made my auntie very happy, and I would get a good tip because of it. I guess if you have any advice, I will take it, but I don't think getting rid of Larry will be of my best interest, since I've read too many creepy stories about stalker situations, and trying to escape a creep only makes things worse. But also, my auntie would probably fire me, and my mom would be upset. If I reveal this to my mom, this would make my family situation much worse, since my mom relies on my auntie way too much. But either way, it feels good to share this. I feel like just talking about it makes me feel better, and reading other stories makes me feel like I'm not alone, and maybe I'll find help in the best way. I might be in this situation for a while, but sharing it relieves some of the stress. Thanks again for listening. If I have any updates, I'll post them here. Edit. Thank you for all your comments. I wish I could respond to all of them. I'm glad everyone is so nice and helpful, and also the messages of advice too. I want to talk to my mom, but I'm scared this will make her worried for me and bring her down. My mom secretly drinks to relieve her problems. I know she'll blame herself for this, and I don't want to see my mom's drinking get worse. I think I'll work through the summer vacation and quit after. Larry comes in almost every day. After reading some comments, yesterday I told him I'll be deleting my Facebook and made it private and deleted him from my friends list. He was sad and asked a lot about it, if I'm okay. I still don't think Larry's a bad person. He's just lonely, I think. I didn't talk to my auntie yet. I love my aunt, and I don't think she would want to put me in danger. But I also think she doesn't think Larry is a bad person. I really want to work hard this summer and make a lot of tips for my mom. Maybe enough that I can make up a reason to stop working after summer vacation. I was on Grindr, a queer dating hookup app. I was talking to this guy, and it was pretty casual at first. We were just chatting, and he wanted me to come over and hook up. I told him that I was just in the area hanging out with a friend and waiting for another to get here. He kept pushing the idea, and suddenly he got closer to me on the app, from being under a mile away to under 2,000 feet away. I asked him what he was doing because he somehow got closer. He said he was just driving around. First red flag that I should have picked up on. I eventually asked him if he was driving around a graveyard, and he said yes. And one thing led to another, and I met him up outside the graveyard entrance and told him it was like a 2-minute walk from my friend's house to the entrance. So I start walking. I get not but a few yards towards the entrance from my friend's house when a car pulls over. It's him, skinnier than I saw him in the pictures. He immediately starts rubbing himself, asking if I want to take a ride around the block. I told him I wasn't getting into a stranger's car in a town that I'm not familiar with. Eventually, he drove off down the road. Now, I didn't think to wait until he was way down the road to head back inside, which was probably my biggest mistake. This part is speculation, but I'm sure he waited to see what house I went into. After a text conversation of him telling me that we should have done stuff in the graveyard, I told him that would be disrespectful to the dead, and he said he didn't care. Then I tried to send a message saying, I care, but the message didn't send. So I opened the app and he blocked me. Whatever, people block others all the time. I get a few more messages from other people, but tell them the same thing, that I'm at a friend's house and I can't just pop out. After that, I went to sleep on the couch in the front room. Next thing I know, I'm awake. I didn't know why. The sun wasn't shining through the curtains, so it couldn't be that early. My body usually wakes me up around 6 or 7 a.m. So I lay there for a second, and I hear a knock on the window behind and to the right of me. My first thought was someone next door was doing work on their house. They were only a few yards away after all. That was until I heard the knock again. But who's doing that on a Tuesday morning? I was immediately frightened that it was the guy from last night. But I tried to rationalize it. Maybe one of my friends got stuck outside and needed me to come and open the door. But then I heard a knock on the window from the other side of the sunroom. At this point, I'm just freaking out and my mind is racing. My first idea is to grab the phone and check the time. It was only 5 a.m. I tried calling my friend as I really didn't want to wake both of them up. The first call didn't get picked up. I decided fuck it, I'm gonna peek through the window that the front door has. Mind you, there's curtains on it because those windows take up most of the door. But first I checked the deadbolt. It was unlocked, so I attempted to lock it. This was an old brass deadbolt that, quite frankly, I didn't know how it worked. So I decided to peek through the window. Thankfully, no one was out there but their cat, so I let it in. After this, I said fuck it and woke up everyone. There was no more knocking. I checked on my phone and saw that there was a blank profile about 350 feet away. I then refreshed it and they were 800 feet away. After I saw this, I didn't know what to think. I frantically searched through my settings on Grindr to find out how to turn my location off. I couldn't figure it out, so I signed off the app. Now I'm upstairs relaxing with my friend, hoping not to hear another knock on the window. So creepy guy from Grindr, let's not meet. This encounter happened a few months ago. For context, I'm an 18-year-old male and live about 1.5 kilometers away from a shopping center. We're just under a mile. The route I take usually requires me to turn 2 corners and walk straight the rest of my journey. Although pretty early on in the walk, there is a tall apartment block to the left of the pathway along the main road. I would say it's about 4 to 5 levels. I live in a shady area and previously the apartment block had a case of a stabbing that killed a woman a year before the story takes place. I witnessed the cleanup crews hosing down the area where it happened. This caused me to be pretty wary of the area in general. On this day in particular, I needed to go to the shopping center to pick up a couple supplies. I noticed as I started walking down the pathway of the straight road, the sky was pretty dark. It was pretty early in the afternoon, so this meant a storm was on the way. Not a drop of rain fell as I made my way to the shop. Once I had arrived, I picked up what I needed and went window shopping for a while. When I was satisfied, I exited through the door that I originally entered and began walking back home. I made it to the final set of traffic lights, and it was probably about a 7-minute walk to my house. The rain started to trickle at first, and then after that, it poured down pretty heavily. 3 minutes later, I could see my apartment block about 20 meters ahead to the right. The rain was still pouring down, so the visibility wasn't that great. That's when I could make out this man in a dark green poncho. He had the hood of his poncho over his head and a big grin on his face for some reason. As I got closer and closer to him, I didn't like the feeling I was getting. He reached out his arms, almost as if he was attempting to bring me into his embrace, keeping that same smile on his face he had before. The man was about 5 meters distance from me when I took the opportunity to cross onto the median strip of the road. I noticed his glance followed me as I crossed into the middle grassy patch. Even though there was no traffic, he decided not to chase me down and continued walking the pathway as he kept eye contact with me. The thought of what would have happened if I walked into his arms still frightens me today. Even if he didn't mean any harm and was not trying to grab me, I still don't like the vibe I got from him. And when I reached the middle of the road, I felt safer and relieved, especially considering he didn't attempt to follow behind me. A bunch of years ago, I matched with this guy on Tinder. I was a freshman in college and just got out of a relationship, having fun. I matched with this guy, male, 24. We can call him D. He was a little odd, but we had similar interests and went to the same school, so I thought, why not? The red flags started rolling in immediately when I said that I would go on a date with him. Of course, the fact that he was much older isn't lost on me as an initial red flag. He tells me he's not in town, but that he'll leave his grandmother's funeral early and come pick me up. He was a minimum 5 hours away, and at this time I didn't have a car, so he said he would pick me up. D ended up driving all the way back to pick me up. When he picked me up, he was in sweatpants, a wife beater, and flip-flops, which struck me as odd because he said he was coming from a funeral. We hadn't really made plans, just to get a bite to eat and hang out. Since he had been out of town, he asked if it was okay if we stopped to pick up his dog. He had left his dog with a friend. I like dogs, so I was like, no problem. It was dark and we pull up to an apartment complex and he leaves me in the car and comes back with a golden retriever that's a bit older. The dog immediately starts growling at me, which had never happened to me before, so I started feeling a little weird. Because we have his dog, he wanted to drop him off at his house. This feels logical to me, and I'm anxious to get the growling dog away from me. When we pull up to Dee's house, he asked me if I want to come in, and I do. So we walk in and I immediately knew it was the wrong choice. The house was trashed. There was trash everywhere. Trash bags full along the front entry, trash on the couch, and just general crap everywhere. Dee let me know that he has a roommate, but his roommate isn't home. After brushing the trash off the couch, he asked me if I wanted to sit down and play chess. I had expressed that I was interested in learning, and he seemed more than happy to help me learn. This too was a mistake. Dee begins explaining the game to me, and it isn't fun first date explaining. He had gotten very serious and is showing me each piece while telling me what it is, what it does, and how it moves. Dee then begins questioning me over each piece, which I got most wrong. Every time I get one wrong, he yells the correct answer and tells me to try again. He got more and more frustrated, and it made me very uncomfortable. So I suggested we pause chess and do something else. Dee suggests watching a movie, which is fine with me. The idea of us leaving and going to get some food, seemingly forgotten. He tells me that we can watch a movie in his room, and I oblige. But then he explains that he has to put sheets on the bed because he washed them before leaving for his grandma's funeral. I had assumed that we were moving into his bedroom because it may have been cleaner, but when we go in, it's not, and there's no TV in his room. He proceeds to put Iron Man 2 onto his phone to have us watch it. We watched about 10 minutes of it before things got sexual. I won't tell you strangers' details, but short story short, we didn't have sex, but other things went down. I will say those things were consensual. After they occurred, I was feeling really odd about the whole situation and told him I didn't want to have sex. He was confused but didn't push it at first. He said he was fine and we watched about 5 more minutes of the movie before he said he didn't want to watch the movie anymore. He started complaining and asking me why I didn't want to have sex with him, and I simply said that I wasn't in the mood anymore. He then began pressuring me to tell him exactly what it was about him that made me feel that way. At this point, we had moved from the bedroom back to the dirty living room. You might be thinking, seems like a perfect time to leave. And I thought so too, but here's where things start getting scary. As if he knows I'm thinking about leaving, he explodes and begins to scream at me. This is a 6-foot-something man screaming in the face of a 5-foot-nothing young girl. Of course, I internally freaked out, but I'm trying to make sure I don't piss him off even more. But I'm also not agreeing to anything. For the next 5 to 10 minutes, Dee screams at me about why I don't like him, why I don't want him, and continuously asks what's wrong with him, and to tell him. I try to placate him the best as possible, saying the old, "It's not you, it's me," and "No, I don't want to leave." Again, this man was my only ride home, and I'm truthfully not sure exactly where I was. Though I did have my phone and Google Maps, I did not have Uber at the time. Dee finally calms down when he believes that I'm gonna stay, then suggests we try playing some video games. I was in full internal freakout mode, trying to make sure I was playing the part of the interested date because I was terrified that if he felt like I wanted to leave, he would freak out again. We played this game for a while and then out of nowhere, Dee starts getting upset again. He started yelling about why no one likes him, why no one wants to get to know him, and why no one loves him, saying that he has never had a girlfriend and all his dates have been one-night stands. Again, I try to placate him with a, "I don't know, lots of girls are snooty like that." At this point, I'm saying anything and everything he wants to hear. He even starts crying about how his mother never loved him, and telling me very deep, dark things that his mother has said to him and treated him. After he finally calms down once more, he gets up and goes to the kitchen to fix us some drinks. Now, if you're anyone with a brain, you're thinking absolutely not, which was my exact thought at the moment. I declined multiple offers for a drink. He asked if instead of alcohol, I wanted water, and of course I declined, saying that I wasn't thirsty. I stayed in his apartment until about 1 a.m. because I was sitting there next to him, terrified to 1. Ask him to take me home, 2. Say that I would walk home, 3. Figure out how to get an Uber. I've been trying to download Uber on my phone without him noticing, but then it asked for card information, and that was too hard to do without him noticing. So around 1 a.m. I yawn very loud and say, "Oh wow, it's 1 a.m. My roommates are going to be worried about me." I laugh, as if my roommate would be stupid enough to worry, and that I haven't been watching the clock since he picked me up at 9 p.m. Then said, "I'm so tired, I should get home soon." Again, I was super scared that he would freak out, but he didn't explode. He just looked at the clock and said, "Yeah, it's late." But I was not taking my chances, so I said, "I have a great idea. If I get to bed, I'd love to have breakfast with you on campus." I was hoping my offer convinced him that I was intending on seeing him again, and it did. He seemed very happy at the prospect of it, and jumped up, walking me out of his house into his car. The drive back was excruciating long. The ride was completely silent. Neither of us spoke. It was only a 10-minute drive, but I could have sworn that he slowed down every time we got to a particularly dark area or overpass. Dee dropped me off and I smiled and made a good show of being tired, yet excited to see him tomorrow. He offered multiple times to walk me to the door, but I declined every time and said I didn't want to bother him and I'll see him tomorrow. I walked myself to the building, and the moment I got around the corner, I sprinted so fast up the stairs and to the door before he could change his mind and follow me to my place. When I got to my dorm room, I generally felt like I just escaped a serial killer. Even writing this now makes my heart race a bit. I never met up with him, but he begged me multiple times after that to meet up with him again. He even asked to pay me $20 an hour to sit near me in the library. I declined, obviously, and only ever saw him once after the gym on campus. He didn't see me, and I left immediately. I've thought about Dio occasionally since the date, and wonder if all those girls he had one-night stands with had the same experience I did. I sometimes wonder how many girls there were after me. So D, let's not meet again. I'm a 36-year-old female in Sweden. I have worked in mental health care for the last 18 years, mainly with people with psychotic illnesses like schizophrenia. I was working at a group home for 9 years and was very close with my coworkers there, especially 2 females. The last few years I worked there, another female started working there. Let's call her M. And the 4 of us grew very close. She was very timid, shy, friendly, and we all got along well. She was, however, often on long-term sick leave because of her own mental health issues, so we didn't meet much at work. But she would show up at our after-work dinners, so we continued to stay in touch with her, even when she wasn't well enough to work full-time. She told us that she had a history of schizophrenia herself, just like the patients we were treating, but that she was medicated and hadn't had any psychotic episodes for years. Since I have education in psychiatry and a long experience with schizophrenia, I have no judgment towards people suffering from the illness, and it didn't bother me being friends with someone who had a diagnosis like that. And even after what I'll tell you, I feel the same way. In the summer of 2023, I had moved on to work at a new place, also within mental health, but this time forensic psychiatry, like a halfway house for mentally ill murderers. The 4 of us stayed in touch and still met up now and then for dinner parties. M told us that she had been evicted from her apartment because of an incident where she accidentally entered a neighbor's apartment in the middle of the night. She told us that in that huge apartment complex, the doors all look exactly the same, and that she simply walked into the wrong door by accident, that the neighbors had created a scene out of pure drama and reported her to the police. I somehow felt like that sounded out of proportion to evict someone just for that. Perhaps the landlord took that kind of action because he judged her based on her medical history, and I felt bad for her. I questioned her if something else had happened, and she claimed that nothing did, and that was the full story. In Sweden, it's very difficult to get a contract for an apartment when you have gotten evicted. You pretty much get blacklisted. M asked if she could move in with me. Since she was literally on the street, literally homeless, I said, "Of course you can." I've always got myself into uncomfortable situations by saying yes, instead of thinking about myself, and I had no idea how severe the situation would get when I said yes to M. I live in a small apartment. It's one bedroom that pretty much only fits a bed and a desk, a living room that fits a couch and a TV, no room for an extra bed, a small kitchen, and a small bathroom. I have 2 cats. We decided that Em was going to live in the living room, and I offered to throw my couch out so she could get a bed in there. She said that she was fine with sleeping on the couch since it's comfortable enough. I insisted on giving her a bed, but she declined. There's a door between the living room and bedroom, but between the living room and hallway, there is just an open valve so she wouldn't have total privacy. I hung up a thick velvet curtain covering the valve so it at least gave her the sense of a door and more privacy than nothing. There's another door from the bedroom to my kitchen, so I have 2 doors to my bedroom. I have to have one of them open at night since my cats like to go in and out, and they also use the litter box in the bathroom and food and water in the kitchen. I naturally kept the kitchen door open and not the living room door since that's where Em lived, and we wanted to keep our privacy somehow. She wasn't working at this time because she was on one of her long-term sick leaves, and I was working shifts where sometimes I had to wake up at 6 a.m. and sometimes I didn't get home until like 11 p.m. I have severe insomnia and need to combine 2 different sleep aids, and even with that I still wake up easily. I told her that I would appreciate it if she could try to stay quiet those nights when I have to get up at 6 a.m., but that it's fine if she's loud when I'm off work or when I do the evening shifts. She was a heavy smoker and a coffee drinker, so I bought her a coffee machine. Yeah, I know, I'm a weirdo who doesn't drink coffee often, so I didn't have one. I wanted to make her enjoy her living situation more. The coffee machine in the sink is placed right outside my bedroom door. The kitchen is very small. So the first night together, I had to get up at 6 a.m. for my shift. As usual, I had a hard time falling asleep. Emma had been up several times that night to go out and smoke, and I woke up every time. At 5 a.m. she started making coffee, and since it's literally outside my bedroom door, I got wide awake from the sounds it makes. I asked her in the nicest way possible why she was up this early, asking if she had plans today. I mean, she's on sick leave. Why not sleep at 5 a.m. if you can? And she just said that she couldn't sleep. I said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I just appreciate it if you could wait on making your coffee till 6 a.m. since I really need that last hour of sleep because of work." Adding to why I need sleep is that I have epilepsy that gets really bad when I don't get enough sleep. I usually get a lot of seizures when I don't get at least 4 hours of sleep. I knew that I was probably going to get seizures at work now, meaning that this day would be both stressful and potentially dangerous for me, since there's a huge risk that I fall and hurt myself. She said she really wanted coffee with her cigarettes, but that she would try to wait the next time I have to work. I accepted it and went on with my day, but things didn't get better. She continued to wake me up early in the morning and throughout the nights, and continued to promise to stop, but insisted that she really wanted coffee with her cigarettes. I suggested making coffee that night before, or drinking iced coffee, or a Coke instead, but she didn't want that. I may add that she demanded me to be silent at 10 p.m. because that's when she wanted to go to sleep, and I respected that. She used to get these moments of binge eating where she would empty my fridge and pantry from everything I had. I remember this one time I had bought a big loaf of bread, and she texted me 30 minutes after I left the apartment saying, "Hey, I'm sorry, I ate your loaf of bread. I will buy it back once I get money." Like the entire loaf of bread in 30 minutes? I had told her when she moved in to feel at home and what's mine is yours, so I couldn't really get mad, but it started to annoy me for two reasons. It was getting kind of expensive since it was in such a huge amount, and it was always in inconvenient times of the day, like after the evening shift when the stores were closed, and I came home hungry and she had emptied the kitchen from everything I had bought the same day. Em had long black hair that was everywhere, all over the sink, the floor, the bathtub. I'm no clean freak, but I think anyone could understand that this isn't the nicest thing to step in or see everywhere in your house. She also left her fingernail and toenail clippings on the bathroom floor. There are also pee drops on the toilet seat every time she had been to the toilet. I saw a silverfish on my bathroom floor, never ever seen one before that. And they eat hair, skin, and nails, so I figured this fella probably enjoyed life because of the new dirty conditions my bathroom was in. At first, I didn't want to say it straight out because I thought it would hurt her, and I didn't want to make her uncomfortable. So I just put a broom and dustpan in the bathroom to imply that we needed to sweep the floor more often. This didn't seem to work, so after a while, I told her in the nicest possible way with a smile on my face, "Do you think we could try to clean the floor in the bathroom more often? We tend to lose some hair when we brush it, and I'm afraid we might get pests. I saw a silverfish the other day and don't want it to get worse." I always make sure to say we instead of you, so she wouldn't feel attacked. She promised to think about it, but nothing changed. I started dating a guy and was head over heels for him. He was also in a roommate situation, so we had a tough time getting any alone time. I asked Em if there was any chance that we could get one night to ourselves every now and then, in the apartment, and that she of course would get the apartment to herself as well. She didn't like the idea and claimed that she had nowhere to go, no friends or family. Now I wasn't asking her to leave for 24 hours, just a few hours so we could get some quality time together. She could just go to the library or take a walk or whatever. I was at work for 8 to 10 hours, 5 days a week, so she got a lot herself. One of our coworkers realized that this was really tearing at my mood, to never be alone for myself, and I started feeling really suffocated. She offered that Em could stay the night at her place. After all, they were friends too. Em said she didn't want to bother her, but we told her that she didn't. They're friends. She's more than welcome, and I really just wanted one night to myself with my guy. I didn't understand why she was making such a big deal over leaving me and the apartment for just one night. She eventually accepted and spent the night there, and I spent the night away the next week so that she could get more alone time too. When I came home the next morning from my night away, I saw that my cat's water bowl was completely dried out. There was no spill on the floor, and it looked like it had been wiped out with a towel or paper. I had filled it to the brim the night before. I asked her how this was possible, and she said the cats must have tipped it out, but there's nothing on the floor like I said. My cats are overly social and usually cuddle up with strangers after just a few minutes. I noticed the cats withdrew from her more and more over time. The last couple of weeks they never left my bedroom except when they ate or used the litter box. It seemed like they were scared of her, which I couldn't figure out since she was so timid. I had an old saucepan from the 1960s that meant a lot to me. You probably wonder how a saucepan can mean a lot to someone, but it was my grandmother's, and it was the only thing I have that belongs to her. My mother used to cook for me with it when I was little, so it had a great nostalgic value to me. She burnt it one day and made no attempt to clean it. She just left it on the stove and went out to smoke. I found it ruined and cried. She didn't even say I'm sorry. She also broke dishes several times and didn't bother to replace them or apologize. This added to my frustration with her naturally. It had probably gone 2 months now, and she kept waking me up at night, kept binge eating my food, never cleaned, never left the house, scared my cats, and ruined my things. I realized that she stole some of my prescription pills, lots of them as well, and I only get one per night, nothing more or less. and as you already know, I really needed them. I had 20 of them on my nightstand when I left for work, and when I came home, they were gone. She denied it, which was pretty hilarious since no one else could have been there. My frustration was getting heavy. The summer heat was strong, and I felt locked up in my teeny bedroom with 2 cats, never getting any time to myself. Never any alone time with the guy I was dating, except for every 14th day. My apartment was messy, and she was stealing from me. Out of nowhere, my old elementary school classmate texted me on Facebook asking me how I knew M. He had seen that I posted on Facebook that we were roommates now. I told him that we were old co-workers and she needed a place to stay because she got evicted. He said, "I know. Do you know why she was evicted?" "Yeah, she accidentally went into a neighbor's apartment." "That's not the full story. She broke in and snuck up to a sleeping baby with a knife in her hand, but luckily the father woke up and wrestled her down and managed to save the baby." I felt sick to my stomach. Could this be true? It would certainly explain why she was evicted, but it just sounded so horrible, and she was such a timid, nice girl. I had so many questions, but my friend had a full police report. It seemed like M had psychosis during the break-in, but those parts weren't public. It was, however, clear to me that she was lying to me about what happened and how long she had been mentally stable. I started getting quite paranoid now, and I was already frustrated with everything and really wanted her to move out. We did, however, have a contract that she would need 30 days notice. I knew that if I asked her in a harsh way, it would mean 30 days of chaos until she moved out, so I wanted to handle this as nicely as I could. I started looking for cheap hostels for her that I could suggest her to move into so she wouldn't be on the streets. I sat down with her and told her that I loved living with her and I feel really horrible for this, but that I just really miss alone time and that the apartment is too small for 2 people. I said it wasn't personal and that I didn't want to live with anyone right now and that I wished it would have worked out, that I'm really sorry and hope that we can remain friends. She looked crushed and said that it wasn't possible. I showed her the hostels I found and said I understood that it wasn't the ultimate situation, but that I really needed her to move out because I felt suffocated, and also the summer heat was making it tough to always have the door in my bedroom closed, and that it was tough for me to get sleep, etc. She said okay, she was going to try to move out, but not until 30 days had passed, and I said of course. The first night after our talk, she got up and made her coffee at 2:30 a.m. I nearly had a mental breakdown. I was getting up at 6 and couldn't go back to sleep. I asked her in the morning, for probably the 10th time, to not make coffee till I got up, but she didn't even answer me. She just sat on the sofa and stared out the window. I said, "M," and she kept staring. I was freaked out, but left for work. She kept being weird, kept making a mess, kept waking me up, kept eating all my food, and all I could think about was the incident with her and the baby and the knife. I eventually got so pissed off about being woken up by the coffee maker, so I unplugged it and stored it in my attic, which she had no access to. It may be childish, but I was getting tired at this moment. My sleeping pills were stolen, and I was starting to feel like Edward Norton in the beginning of Fight Club. Well, the next night I woke up at 4 a.m. by her making coffee in a saucepan. I tried to talk to her again, explaining the situation, but she just stared and didn't reply. Me being frustrated and on the tipping point, I took the saucepan and stored it in the attic as well. I know, but I was going crazy. I just wanted her to stop with his nightly coffee routines and get the hint. The third night, I had the guy that I was dating sleeping at our place because I was getting really paranoid now over her weird behavior. Not speaking to me, just staring into space. I woke up from a very light snooze by him poking me. He whispered, "Look." In the doorway, Em was standing there silently, staring at us. This was like a scene from a horror movie, with her long black hair over her face. I kid you not. I didn't say anything at first, because I wanted to know if she just stood there for a second, doing something by the door. but I realized after a while that she was actually standing there just staring at us. This reminded me of the ending of Paranormal Activity when Katie just stares at Micah in the final scene. So I sat up and said, "What are you doing?" But before I could finish the sentence, she just slammed the door shut, and I heard the sound of something metal falling on the floor and her running into the living room. I yelled out, "You need to leave," and started crying hysterically because this was turning into a fucking nightmare. Of course, I didn't go back to sleep, and I was really happy that I had company that night. I just kept asking myself, has she done this before? Stared at me in my sleep? The next day when I got out of bed, I opened the door that she had slammed shut and saw a kitchen knife on the floor. So that was a metal sound I heard before she ran off. I took all the knives and locked them in the attic as well. I then asked a friend of mine to come to the house and be there with me when I told her to move out immediately, that I couldn't wait 27 more days. During the conversation, I really tried to stay calm. I knew she had a mental illness. I know she means no harm. Even though I was so frustrated, I couldn't hate her. I was mostly scared and tired. She, however, didn't answer when I talked to her. She just kept staring out the window. She left the apartment and sent me a text instead, saying that I was disrespectful for bringing a friend over to her place. Nighttime came and I thought this would be a quiet night finally. No coffee maker or saucepan. But at 3 a.m. I woke up to her burning dry coffee powder in a frying pan. At this moment, I felt terrified of her. Her face was dead. Her eyes were black. I suspected that she had gone into psychosis. I stopped the fire and she just ran off into the living room in silence. I knew that she had an appointment with her psychiatrist the next day, and while she was away, I packed her things. I sent her a text saying that she needed to pick them up and give me my keys back, and that I'll give her the money for the hostel for the next 26 days. She didn't reply. The guy I was seeing came to keep me company in case she would fight about it. She didn't. She left the key without looking at us and left. Our coworker, who's friends with both of us, told me that she moved in with the guy that she was dating and stayed there for a few weeks till somehow, amazingly got an apartment of her own. She started working again and I was really happy to hear this. She seemed to do well. Then January of this year, one of our old coworkers told me that M had called her and told her that everything must burn, that she has a baby that she must save, and other delusional stuff. She had called 112, the emergency number, like 911, about this, and they hadn't taken it seriously. M had proceeded to burn the entire apartment down because the voices in her head was telling her to do it. That she had to burn everything down to save her friends and family. Her neighbors had tried to rescue her from the fire, but that she had fought them off and ran back in and poured liquor onto the fire to make it burn more. She was arrested and sentenced last week for aggravated arson. She will probably serve her time in a mental institution, probably for a long time, possibly forever. What's ironic is that she'll probably be in the facility I used to work at and end up where she used to work herself. My old coworker was a witness at the trial, and apparently she had stopped taking her medicine because she thought it made her feel numb and that she thought she was stable enough to function without it. Apparently not. She had also stopped taking her medication the last few weeks when she stayed at my house, so when she stared blankly into space, she was going into psychosis. When she stared at me with a knife in her hand, when she burnt the frying pan the last night. It's disturbing to think about what would have happened to me and my cats if she had stayed, or if I had been a heavier sleeper. I also think what would have happened to the baby that she snuck into before she was evicted. And yeah, I know it was crazy that I didn't just throw her out by then. It was complicated. The reason why I haven't been able to talk about it with my friends is because they sympathize with her and have minimized my experience, and they think that I make a bigger deal out of it than I believe it has been. I sort of understand it since they never saw the darkness in her eyes that I saw the last couple of days.